Hello everybody, welcome to Short Shot Archery. Anthony here, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing Win & Win's flagship limb, the Win & Win NSG. And we're going to really see how it stands up. What are the limb's characteristics? How did it shoot for me? And I even have an example or two on if you're not interested in this limb's characteristics, what limbs you should be looking at. So stay tuned. Alright, first off, the build and the look of the limbs. Nice and glossy from the get-go. You can really see the graphene that's involved in these limbs with this graphene top here that's actually see-through. You can see into the limb itself. You can see the carbon underneath it. You also have the graphene that's in the center of this limb, and you can actually see through the limb, which is kind of freaky. But it works. It does its thing. Looks wise too, pretty simple with just the fluorescent yellow kind of like jumping out at you. I don't know, nice and clean. Very, simple look. And that's not a bad thing. Some limbs in the past from other brands and just all over have gotten too fancy with their limb looks, and it ends up actually screwing up the performance of the limb because of causing it to be uneven weight-wise, which caused them to twist, and a whole bunch of other things. This doesn't seem to be the case with these limbs. I think it's nice and simple, and it does its part. So with that, I want to also talk about the durability of the limb. Now, I've been going in and out of my house, in and out of my coach's place, basically all over. These have been packed up in my bow case maybe a couple hundred times at this point. And they've traveled kind of all over the country too. And with that, I really can't find any noticeable dings or dents or chips in the limb themselves. They've really held up well. And I feel like that has to do with maybe the design, but also the clear coat that they put on these limbs. I know I've had limbs from other brands in the past, and it seems like they just chipped and just kind of fell apart really easily. Accidentally hit into something, and next thing you know, oh no, what happened to my beautiful $700-800 set of limbs? They're all messed up now. That doesn't seem to be the case with these, which I was kind of impressed with because them being so glossy in some areas. I was like, oh, this could be a whole lot of fun. But they really did hold up well, and I'm impressed with that. Now on to some characteristics of the Win & Win NSG limbs. From shooting the regular NS limbs to shooting these NSG limbs, the NSGs are definitely smoother, and that was something that I noticed right away, even at the ATA show at their booth, and pulling back other shooters' bows at tournaments who let me pull their bow back. I did notice that these were definitely an improvement on the smoothness characteristic of this set of limbs. Now, another characteristic is how powerful, or I guess hard, you would say, the shot feels on these limbs. There's other brands that have a softer or a weaker shot, you would say. Of course, these things are very hard to put into words because they're feelings, but you can definitely feel a strong reaction from these limbs. They do pull back pretty smooth, but you can definitely feel the weight involved, and then when you release, you can really feel the limb sending that arrow down there. This limb is definitely not for somebody that likes a very soft limb. I have a recommendation for you later in the video if you're a person that really likes soft limbs that have super soft draw and then a very soft release. this limb's got a lot of power in it. Now, with that power, I did notice one unique thing, and that was from pulling these limbs back on a win-and-win riser versus pulling them back on my gray AIX riser here. They actually feel even better on a win-and-win riser. Now, this would make sense because, well, Win-and-Win is going to design their limbs for their bows, just like Hoyt or whoever should be designing their limbs to fit their, their risers. They're not going to design this limb to fit other brands' risers. It's just how it is and what makes sense. So, not that they feel bad on this riser, but they definitely feel more powerful on this riser. They still felt smooth, but on a win-and-win riser, I felt like they felt smoother, and I felt like they felt lighter. Now, the times I pulled it back was mostly on TFTs and TFTGs, so I don't know if the carbon riser or the carbon graphene riser with the carbon graphene limbs, if that has something to do with it. And this happens to be an aluminum riser, so maybe you get a more powerful feeling of the shot because of the aluminum and how the aluminum reacts with the carbon graphene. That is still up in the air, but it is interesting to note that there is definitely a change in how the limb feels. The characteristics are still there, but I feel like they are amplified more because of the aluminum riser. Now we're at the point where I'm going to make some recommendations for you if you do consider buying these limbs. And the first one is dampeners. I shot these limbs without dampeners, and I was like, all right, these are fine. It's a good set of limbs. I wasn't particularly impressed or blown away by them. I've shot other limbs without dampeners that I felt performed, more to my personal liking. But by recommendation of my coach, who had been playing around with them previously, he's like, put some dampeners on them. I was like, all right, I will, go into the bank account and buy some dampeners. So I did, and it really transformed and enhanced my shot, because as I was saying before, I was like, these limbs got a lot of power, and they felt even more powerful once I slapped them on an aluminum riser. Now, did it just magically solve all the problems? No, but it definitely took them down, a notch. It didn't make them feel as light or as smooth or not as powerful as when they were on a win-and-win riser. But it definitely made them better. It definitely made the shot more enjoyable. They went from being, in my opinion, a good limb to, all right, this is an exciting limb to shoot. I look forward to, shooting this limb. I feel like the powerfulness of these limbs was kind of mellowed out a little bit. Now, it's still definitely there, but it did bring back it brought a little more softness, I guess, into the shot, you would say. Didn't make them too soft, didn't feel like warm butter, but you knew you were shooting a bow, but it responded really nicely to your shot. And that would be my biggest recommendation. Would definitely be to pick up some dampeners for this set of limbs. Now, if you want a smoother and softer limb, well, Win-and-Win has been listening to the people. At least that's what I got from talking to them at the ATA show and the Vegas shoot. They got a lot of feedback from the NSG limbs. The NSG limbs are still their flagship limb, but they have a second flagship limb, as you would call it, and that is the MXT GF limb, and that limb is designed to be smoother and softer. It's supposed to be much closer to some of their competitors' limbs, because they had some people that really like other companies' limbs, and they realized that this is something that maybe they're missing out on, so they developed that limb. So if you're somebody that wants a smoother drawing limb and a just a softer shot in general, then I would definitely point you in the direction of the MXT limbs. I personally have not gotten to shoot them a lot here. Win Win has not sent a pair for testing, but I did get to shoot them at the ATA show, and I got to borrow a pair for about an hour or so and play around with them at the Vegas shoot. So I got an idea for how they perform. Definitely smoother in the draw, definitely softer in the shot. The only thing I would say that's a little bit different is you're definitely going to have a more spring to the bow in a way. It's going to feel more like a yucca set of limbs, which is very interesting. But hopefully that can be another video down the road if Win Win decides to actually send me a set to test that I'll have to return to them. That would be really cool. Then we can kind of really piece this all together, and I can paint you guys a really good picture of these two limbs. But that would definitely be my recommendation if you want to stick with the Win Win brand and their high-end limbs. I would look into the MXTs. All right, so that wraps up this review of the Win Win NSG limbs. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Overall, great set of limbs. Highly recommend the dampeners. I'll have links down below to Win Win's site to see what they have to say about their own product. They'll have all their testing data and stuff like that there. I have some of my own at sureshotarchery.org under archery data, so you can check that out if you like. Other than that, big thank you to my Patreons and anybody that's picked up a t-shirt. It helps to fund me picking up products so that I can test and review them for you. So big thank you to each and every single one of you. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day, and as always, happy shooting.